Good day, everyone. Today I'm tying the baby darter, a streamer pattern I designed for trophy trout and bass. The hook is the AHREX HR413 Classic Single size 1/0. The thread to secure the rear portion of the wing is the Semperfli Nano Silk 12/0 black. Start the thread at the end of the return eye and trim the tag. Wrap the thread along the straight part of the hook even with the hook point. Whip finish and move the thread aside for now. The next thread I'm using is the UNI-Nylon 70 Denier white. Start the thread and trim the tag. Wrap it over the black thread and bring it back to the start. For the weight, I'm using a 0.025 diameter lead wire. Take a piece of lead wire and fold it over the bodkin so it's rigid. Place it from underneath the hook and between the thread at the start of the threaded area. Line up the sides even with the threaded area, secure with firm wraps to the end of the threaded area, keeping the wire parallel to the hook shank. Flatten with smooth pliers and add thin head cement. Trim the excess lead wire flush with the wrap on a taper. Build up the thread into a taper at the end of the trimmed lead wire and bring it back to the start. For the rib, I'm using a small, flat, gold embossed tinsel. Secure the tinsel from underneath the hook along the threaded area to the black thread and build up the thread. Next, split the thread and wax both sides. Add the olive ice dub loosely. Add the dubbing twister, double over the thread and spin to secure the dubbing. Brush out the dubbing and switch to a hackle plier. Wrap the dubbing with firm edge-to-edge wraps along the threaded area. Pulling the long fibers back with your fingers. Secure by the thread and trim the excess. For the remaining part of the threaded area, I'm adding the orange ice dub. Prepare and wrap the same way as the olive ice dub. Secure by the thread and trim the excess. Build up the thread and whip finish. Brush out the dubbing thoroughly and pull the fibers downward. I'm switching to the Semperfli Nano Silk 12-aught white for the next part of the fly. Start the thread and trim the tag. Build up the thread and whip finish. Next, I'm preparing the rabbit strip fur for the wing. I'm using the brown with black bars rabbit strip fur. Secure the tip temporarily in front of the dubbing and measure. I want the hide portion about twice the length of the dub body. Trim the hide at that point. Release the strip and trim the hide flush with the fur. Trim the hide on a taper. Make sure to keep the fur to one side of the hide before you trim and remove the excess fur. Secure the tip of the wing in front of the dubbing, whip finish and trim. Next, move the flat gold embossed tinsel out of the way. Hold the rabbit strip tight over the dub body and separate the rabbit fur even with the black thread. Secure the thread around the hide and the bare hook, about a dozen or so wraps, whip finish and trim. Move the flat gold embossed tinsel off to the side and add head cement to the wrap. Brush out the dubbing and the fur away from the hook. Start the Semperfli Nano Silk 12-aught thread again and trim the tag. Next, wrap the flat gold embossed tinsel forward on a slight angle, evenly spaced between the dubbing and the rabbit fur, Matuka style, using a bodkin to separate the fibers. Secure in front of the wing and trim the excess. Build up the thread and whip finish. Add the brown ice dub shimmer fringe sparsely on top of the rabbit strip wing. Secure, trim the excess, and build up the thread on a taper. Prepare a small section of olive dyed fox fur strip. Split the thread, wax, and add a section of the dyed olive fox fur. Trim the hide portion and remove the long guard hairs. Spread the fur along the thread, add the dubbing twister, double over the thread twice, and spin to secure the fibers. Brush out the fibers and wrap edge to edge in front of the wing, pulling the fibers back with your fingers. Secure by the thread and trim the excess. Build up the thread, whip finish, and brush out the fur. Split the thread, wax, and add a small section of natural rabbit strip fur. Trim the fur flush with the hide and spread out the fur along the thread. Add the dubbing twister, double over the thread, and spin to secure the fur. Brush out the fur thoroughly and wrap the fur as a collar with tight edge-to-edge wraps while pulling the fibers back with your fingers. Secure by the thread, fold the thread over, secure, and trim the excess. Build up the thread and whip finish. Next, I'm adding the dyed yellow with orange tips rabbit strip for the throat. Secure the fur from underneath the hook with the firm wraps tight to the collar. For the gills, I'm adding 2 partridge body feathers. Place both feathers together with the tips even and remove the waste portion from the stems. Flatten the stems on each feather and secure on each side of the throat and collar. Trim the excess fur from the throat, flush with the wrap. Fold the stems over and secure. And trim the stems flush with the wraps. Build up the thread, whip finish, and add head cement to the wrap. Take a piece of lead wire and wrap it over the gills and collar to keep it out of the way. Next, I'm preparing the beige colored Glo-Bug yarn for the head by cutting 3 sections. Split each section into 4 even pieces. Tie in the first 2 pieces for each side of the head, left and right. then 2 pieces for the top and bottom on the same wrap, and secure. Pull all the fibers back and secure the thread in front of the yarn. Repeat this step to the eye, whip finish, trim, and add head cement to the wrap. Use a hair packer to compress the yarn. Next, take a bodkin and separate the yarn away from the rest of the fly. Use a comb to separate the fibers. Comb out the yarn so the fibers are at a right angle to the hook. Use scissors with a long blade to trim the sides flat, left and right of the head. Then use curved scissors to trim the top and the bottom into a taper. Trim any high spots with the curved scissors to finish the head. Next, I'm using a brown marker to color the top of the head and halfway down the sides. Add 5-minute epoxy in the middle of each side of the head. And add the olive 5mm 3D eyes. Remove the lead wire and brush out the fibers. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe and hit the like button to see more videos like this.